And we're live. Happy New Year, Judah. How you doing?
Happy New Year! I've never been more mediocre. I
Yeah.
don't know, man. This is. I feel like I should be more feely about this New Year. The one thing I love about it, the 2020, like I've had no problem writing 2020. 2019, I had such a hard time writing 2019,
Right.
remembering it was 2019. That's all I
Yeah, I
got.
get that. Yeah, 2020 is easier to write.
It's just easy to remember. It's like an even number.
That's
I
true.
don't know.
Yeah. Trying to check my color. Good morning, Allison. How you doing? Welcome to 2020. It's a good time to be alive. It's a new decade. I mean, technically the new decade, quote unquote, starts year one, I guess. So the real nerds will complain about that, but none of us are going by that. 2020, this is the new decade. All right. Leaving the cursed decade behind. It's time to move into the future. Was it a cursed decade for you?
Absolutely not. No.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
You're an optimist.
I am. Maybe. I mean, I guess if I look at it closely, maybe it was. I don't know.
One of the things I may do this year, I'm still kind of toying with it. I may do a video series analyzing works of art and moments of life that really, I think were grounding moments, like good moments to remember. The good things instead of talking about all the bad things. So, because I think there's a tendency to familiarity breeds contempt, right? So you look back 20, 30 years like, the 80s, nostalgia. And nobody remembers that, everybody was complaining about Reagan. Like Cronenberg made a movie about how Martin Sheen played basically Reagan. And it was like, but Martin Sheen played the president and he was this psychotic, crazy person who was going to end up causing World War III and nuclear annihilation. And Christopher Walken shoots basically President Reagan. Like that's how the movie ends.
What movie was this?
Or he tries to shoot him and then they kill him. The Dead Zone.
Never even heard of it.
Oh, really? Yeah. So I mean, people forget though that there was all sorts of like Chicken Little, hand, pulling out hair. Oh, it's the end of the world. And so nostalgia has this tendency to only remember the good things. So I thought it'd be good for me to remember the good things early, instead of talking crap about, because 2015 to now, man, it's been the last half of this decade was not good. I reached my pinnacle sometime in 2015 and it's just like boom, crash. It was just like Icarus, this full-fledged fall back down. Yeah, 2019 sucked, Allison. I agree, man. 2018 and 2019 for us, especially here in Panama City. I mean, I'm just going to keep saying it. I'm going to keep saying it because we heard nothing but how terrible the world was for allowing Katrina to happen to Louisiana. Look, we got destroyed and nobody gave a shit. Nobody talked about Panama City at all. It's just like the worst hurricane in 100 years in this area. Everyone's like, yeah, serves you right, rednecks. Okay. All right, cool. Thanks. It sucked, man. It was so bad. I mean, the blessing of it was not many people died. So I mean that was good. Which is a miracle, really. I mean, I think that's why people didn't get more bitter. Is that it was truly miraculous. Some people's stories from it are insane. Like in Mexico Beach, to the east of us, like this dude had to hold his roof, like his ceiling, while and shield his mom. And they were just standing, like we're talking 160 mile an hour gusts. And this dude was just, it's stupid that he survived. It's miraculous. So, it could have been
he held
worse.
it like Captain America style?
I guess so. I guess so. Basically just trying to guard from, random debris coming through. And thankfully, like he didn't get vacuumed out or whatever. Like it was wild.
Dude, I'm glad you live streamed during the first little part of it. Like, it helped me be there, know how scary.
And I thought we were in the eye. I mean, right in the eye wall. But the western side is always weaker, and I mean, I thought we were right there, and so it looked bad to me. But just 5 miles to our east, it was another entity entirely. So yeah, so we are off to a good start. Feeling pretty good. Feeling pretty good for 2020. Daryl, how are you doing? How's the old TFC crew? How are we, Judah? We're better than mediocre. You know, we're optimistic looking into the new decade.
I mean, we're living in one of the most fantastic times of modern history. I mean, the kind of things that we can access and do and be part of. It's amazing.
It is. I mean, right now, yeah, we got 3 Indian dudes saying Happy New Year to us. I mean, we get to have these instantaneous conversations. Like, I'm not in India anymore, but, these folks have kept in touch and feels good. I started my first Bollywood series in a long time. Mm-hmm. I'm focusing on the music because I thought that would be an easy thing for me to talk about personally. I could do this series for the rest of my life. That's if Bollywood ended tomorrow and T-Series were copyright striked and couldn't upload anything else, I could. There's so much music history in Bollywood. It's insane, dude. Like, so there was one Bollywood playback singer named Muhammad Rafi, and I want to say he did over 400 songs in Bollywood movies. Maybe, but I think it's actually more than that. I think it's a lot more than that. I think I'm remembering that wrong. It might be 4,000. It's a stupid amount of songs. And you go back and listen to that period of Bollywood. It was classic Bollywood, 50s through the 70s, I'm thinking. Mm-hmm. It was him, and there was this other guy, Kishore Kumar. And, I mean, there was tons of them. But I could find 30 songs each with those guys. I mean, that would be a whole year's worth of content if I were doing weekly videos, just talking about them. So it's like, and then there's Asha Bhonsle. She's a famous playback singer, sung a lot of the women's tracks during the 70s and 80s. And I mean, I could probably do 40 of hers. So I think this will be an actual thing that I can monetize because I'm just talking about it. And I might do some of those covers, so we'll give it a shot.
That'd be awesome.
So yeah, I'm excited for 2020.
What looking back at 2019, what stood out the most for you as something like positive, something exciting?
Well, it's funny enough, today I've got a little slideshow we're going to look at. It's again incomplete as per usual. But here, I'll share it in the chat. It's called Work as Castration. And we'll look at, there was a tweet this last week. I think it was this week or the week before when Silicon Valley guys, they started getting in this debate about work and how you really gotta want it. It was like basically the boomer, you back in my day. I'm a boomer. It's just like that old school mentality. Oh, I got here. I started at the bottom. Now I'm here. You guys just don't appreciate hard work. It was that mentality versus Jason Fried, who he started Basecamp, CEO of Basecamp. Anyway, we'll get into it in a minute. Okay. But it's just this argument between like leisure versus work. And I think you can go too far either of those extremes. I worked very hard in the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, trying to do the construction work after that hurricane. And I discovered very early on that what Jason Fried's description of it is very accurate, that a lot of what we call work is actually just toil. It's people not understanding how to properly manage logistics, and the shit just rolls down. You know, there's rot at the top or rot in the middle, and everyone just passes the buck. Down, down, down it goes and the working class has to clean up the mess and has to make the ends meet. And this is why I think Marx, socialism, communism are still so emotionally valid to this day is because if you've ever worked a job at the front lines, you're just like, nothing makes sense. You don't understand how to fix it, but you just know that he's right. The proletariat are just moved around like pawns by people who don't understand how chess works. And so you're just like, something's wrong here. But we're going to talk a little bit today about why as we go forward into 2020, to push back on this notion that work, business as usual, i.e. working so hard, you got to want it, man. You just got to have 100 hours a week. Like, yeah, we have these other inventions, and we're going to talk a little bit about them, but like the lever, we have electricity. There's things that are supposed to make things easier, but invariably, it's like some people realize, like there are certain people insinuate themselves into a process and they realize, oh, this technology made my job superfluous. I need to find a way through bureaucracy to render the effect of this technology moot so that I still have a job. Someone posted a chart of hospital administrators, or like administrators in healthcare versus new practitioners. And the number of new practitioners grows at an incremental, like, 1-to-1 rate. I mean, it's not even 1-to-1. It's just like this steady, almost flat line, right? And then administrators somewhere in the 70s or something goes exponential.
Wow.
Yeah. And that is happening in that's happening in the government, that is happening in like Walmart. It's just like all these extra hands, people talking about people, talking about people, talking about people working.
Well, the place I've seen that the clearest, and it's not like, I don't know about the working part of it, but is in the public schools, working at the Chicago public schools.
Yeah.
It's just like there's like 10 teachers and 1 million administrators.
Yes.
Like,
and the teachers have to do. The funny thing is, you'd think with all those extra administrators, they would do the clerical work, right? No, the teachers become secretaries. I'm like, what do these people do? You have all these people, all these admins. What are they administrating exactly? Because the teachers have to fill out all this paperwork. They become accountants. They become guidance counselors. They become insurance agents. Like, it's just, it's insane. The extra bloat that goes along with work.
Yeah. Here at one of the Chicago schools I worked in, they had a whole, like half of the school were like office buildings with what they called the network or something. It was like a real, like, it's kind of scary name. It was the level above the principals, above. It was like these. I don't know what they did. We never interacted, but like the only time they showed their faces when there was like food or something like that. They would come out and like wearing suits and stuff. Like, hey, I'm with the network. I'm like, what are you?
We're with the Skulls, the Skulls Network. Yeah.
I want to know how to get a job doing that.
Somebody posted on Twitter yesterday. There's a term for it. Oh man, I can't remember the term. Like I heard the word, but I actually didn't know what this word meant. Silence is golden,
Silence is golden, golden.
Oh man, I
What are you looking for?
Screen cap way too much stuff. Oh man, I guess I didn't save it. No. There's a term for this that a person, like a job is just made, and it's a status job. It's not sinecure. That's what it means. That's what it is. Sinecure. SINECURE. Let's see if I'm pronouncing that right.
That's interesting.
Sinecure. A position requiring little or no work, but giving the holder status or financial benefit. And so you can think about people who have like these $200,000 speaking gigs and stuff like that. Like Rogan was actually talking about that on. He had that one. Basically, Dan Bilzerian. He's like the the manly man who
Mm-hmm.
just has like women around him all the time, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, his whole brand is basically just showing how high on the hog he lives.
Mm-hmm.
But Rogan was talking about that in that podcast, that basically these politicians, they only get paid what, $200,000 to $400,000 a year at the national level, but somehow they're making millions of dollars every year. He's like, and it is this sinecure sort of scenario where they're going to some giant bank or corporate convention and speaking. He's like, no one wants to hear these people talk. Like, their speeches are garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but they get paid this ludicrous, disproportionate amount. And you would think that would annoy communists, right? Like, oh, you're worth $200,000 an hour? That's not fair.
Right. Right.
But there is no like, at least
Well,
with capitalism, like the guy is like, that's what capitalism is saying. It's talking about leverage. So of course a capitalist is going to promote somebody who makes more money because they figured out a better way to do it. Like,
well, on the capital side, there's all these, like, really makes me sick is this like good rich dad poor dad type stuff. These guys, these authors that are selling books, like the whole thing way they make money is selling books and speaking, getting paid to speak about making money, but the way they make money is speaking and selling books.
yeah, and that's why I think we need a more integrated approach with this stuff. It's like, I think everyone needs to be a practitioner of something, and I think it has to be more than just writing and talking, and that's why it's like I wanted to start doing this podcast when it wasn't making money, so that I am forced to do something else that actually makes money. And our concept of making money, it's most of the time it's not true. No money is being made. It's just being reapportioned, and it's not, you're not creating new value. You're just being a parasite, of the host. And we'll get into a little bit of that. I think I am going to play some League today. The surf's up, but yeah, the wind is not good. Man, like to the west of us, dude, Pensacola and South Alabama, of all places, South Alabama, they had these waves over Christmas. It was like some of the best I've seen in a decade in our area. And it's like, give me some of that. We can't get anything over here, man. So it's famine. And even when we get waves, they're just, I don't know, the area's just not cooperating. The wind is always messed up. All right, so I'm going to look at this slideshow here. We'll discuss this. So the title of it is Work as Castration, How Plutocrats, Demagogues, and Tycoons Peddle the Myth of Sisyphus as Praxis. So this little debate started. Jason Fried, the CEO of Basecamp, he tweeted this. It says something, I don't have the whole thing here, but wait a minute. I might have it linked to it. No, I don't have it. If your company requires you to work nights and weekends, your company is broken. This is a managerial problem, not your problem. This is a process problem, not a personal problem. This is an ownership problem, not a... Let me see if I can get that. Did I not have it? Yes, I got it. Hold on. This is an ownership problem, not an individual problem. And he goes on to say, if your company requires you to work nights and weekends, they'd require you to work even more if there was more time. It's not that nights and weekends are the exact amount of extra time required. It's that that's all the extra time there is. They'd take more if they could. To be clear, since some have made the point, I'm talking about nights and weekends in addition to a standard day's work, not talking about people who work night or weekend shifts as their only shifts. And so Ryan Selkis responded this: if you don't work nights and weekends in your 20s, you're not going to have a successful career. Sorry. What was surprising to me about this tweet is, like, he's a big Bitcoin proponent, Ryan Selkis. So he's familiar with the fact that systems as they are not really working properly, or he wouldn't be promoting Bitcoin. Like, that's the whole point of progress in technology or finance or society, is that you find a better way to do it so it frees people up. Yeah. It takes out middlemen. It takes out the reason to depend on a bank or a government if you have something like Bitcoin, a sovereign currency that is self-sovereign instead of dictated by some Caesar. Like, that's the whole idea. And so the fact that he would appeal to this kind of boomer mindset that you're like, you're not going to have a successful career. Who wants a successful career? I don't want a career. I Like, I want to do something I'm passionate about and have a bunch of avocations that compile into one thing. Like, who wants a career in 2020? Like, everyone's sick of work. Like, we want something that actually has meaning. And this is what appeals to so many people about the Marxist ideal is it's like, oh, we're going to work for this cause together. People want a cause. People want something to believe in. A career? Careerism is the future, Ryan? Really? Then what's the point of Bitcoin? So then someone, so Crypt, NMGRM, one of the smarter guys in the weird Twitter side that I kind of follow. He said, funny how the Valley capitalists are such big believers in the labor theory of value. And he quote tweets Aaron Hoffman, who was saying, most people that changed the world were workaholics. MLK, Gandhi, Hamilton, Thatcher, etc. all work nights and weekends. But those people weren't careerists primarily. Like, they were passionate about something. And so if you're passionate about something, when I get into a video mode where I'm I'm driven by the process. Like, it's not a workaholic. It's like, it's painful, but it's different kind of pain than the toil that you experience in a career. I worked in that construction business, and the toil, the pain didn't come from the difficulty of the work or the fact that I have a task done. It came from bureaucrats constantly nagging you at every turn. When you're about to get something done, they're like, you know what? We need you to do this. And they throw all these unnecessary roadblocks, just like the teacher who now has to fill out 85 forms instead of just teaching kids. Oh, well, you're a teacher? No, you're an administrator, teacher, secretary, insurance agent, lawyer, accountant, parent. Here, let's forget. So work ceases becoming work, and it just becomes slavery, where a person's bandwidth is ruled from dawn to dusk. And you'll have people say stuff like these sort of self-help platitudes, like the amount of effort you put in is going to come back to you. It's like, that's not true. And this is why Marxism still energizes people, because that's a lie. That is people who really haven't experienced this talking out their ass because they don't actually know. It's like, yeah, it worked for you because you worked for your dad. It's like, yeah, it worked for you because you had something else actually, waiting in the wings, or some divine amount of luck. God blessed you. But you take credit for it because it's like, yeah, I just, I put my nose to the grindstone, man, and just made it happen. That happens sometimes, but sometimes it's just the lottery. And pretending that it was all your effort in that extra, staying 2 hours after while everyone else did. Some of that is true, but sometimes it's somebody coming along. I mean, anybody who's worked in the corporate world or at any level has seen that actual good workers end up have the rug pulled out from underneath them. It's the Ned Stark effect. The person who's actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, some disingenuous person is going to be able to find a way to pull them out of the equation, because that is an assault on their ability for upward mobility. Any thoughts on any of that?
Well, I have some pushback in the sense that, I don't, maybe to nuance what they're saying here is that you have to be willing to work nights and weekends on whatever you're passionate about. I don't know, man. I can't really talk because I've never really been successful at anything, but the people that have been successful, the people. So I mean, it all depends on how you define success.
Well, but here's the problem: is they're talking about two different things. Jason Fried is talking about working for a company that's already established. He's not talking about working as an entrepreneur. He's not talking, because Fried was an entrepreneur. He worked his ass off, but he did something he was passionate about. He had a vision, So Jason is talking about working for a company, and Ryan is talking about entrepreneurship. These are two totally different things. I mean, if that's what Ryan means there. But just the notion that, if you work 100-hour weeks for a company that you're going to rise through the ranks and have a successful career, bullshit. You're probably just going to get more stuff thrown on you, more responsibilities, because other people realize, I don't have to work. This guy will do it for me. You're like, oh, that'll come back to you. Not really. I mean, maybe in 5, 10, 15 years it'll come back to you, but the turnover rate of some of these companies, some of them disappear next year. Where does that go?
Well, if you believe in success at all in companies, which I don't know that you do, like people that are willing to work nights and weekends are much more likely to rise through the ranks than the people that refuse to.
That sounds great in theory, but again, people aren't taking in. Yeah, in the 70s, 80s, maybe 90s. I don't know. I mean, I wasn't really part of any of that. But in our day and age, things are so complicated and there's so many extra there's so much politics involved in the workplace that doesn't follow. And Bronze Age Pervert talks about this in Bronze Age Mindset, that at a certain point, the person that's actually the most effective becomes a target for political intrigue within the office. And people try to outmaneuver him because he's, depending on his work, like there was at some point, I don't know when it was, but some point in corporate American history, people prioritized politics over meritocracy. And I honestly do believe, this is my mythical belief, that when we went off the gold standard, when we enshrined credit over fundamental value in a currency, when we enshrined credit, when we enshrined fractional reserve banking, it started playing with the meritocracy and saying, well, work is value is what you make of it. This whole fiat idea. And so it politicized the workplace because you can't depend on numbers anymore because numbers become arbitrary. So people can start taking credit for merit.
I'm not talking about a meritocracy, though. I'm talking about pure politics. Like, if you're the guy willing to kiss ass, you're the one who's going to get.
Yeah, but that's not work. See, and that's the problem
typically though, like staying longer for and finishing a project, or for the boss or whatever like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you gain brownie points.
Oh yeah, right. But is that work? Or is that politics? How are we defining work? How are we I thought work was doing something, a process that yields an actual physical good or service. I mean, that's what capitalism would say work is. But then you start bringing in a whole array of different things that people like. It's like on the internet, you'll sometimes run into these PR people that try to insinuate themselves into the process, and they're like, oh, well, we can help you with all this other stuff. It's like, well, that has already been solved by Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and Facebook. Like, why do I actually need that? And too many people just don't ask that why question. And so they let a whole like parasitic organism come into their corporation. And now work becomes like getting their framework part of it. Part of the whole thing. So now, instead of actually focusing on the product or service or customer, now you're focusing on servicing the service people of the service people. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so work it bloats to include things that were never originally intended to be part of the process of actually making a brick. Now you're making a abstracted brick that's going to fit on another abstracted brick that's going to fit on another one so that you can actually make a real brick. And so there are all these layers of abstracted complexity that aren't necessary to making the brick. So we'll go a little bit further here. So, okay, the labor theory of value. Crypt mentions that. Funny how the Valley capitalists are such big believers in the labor theory of value. Basically that something is worth something if you put more time into it. It's all predicated on time and the labor time. So the labor theory of value goes back to David Ricardo in 1817. He said this: the value of a commodity or the quantity of any other commodity for which it will exchange depends on the relative quantity of labor necessary for its production, and not as the greater or less compensation which is paid for the labor. Not the most articulate person there, Mr. Ricardo, but basically he instituted this idea that time worked on a thing is what imbued a commodity with value. So a person's time. Now, the problem with this is the Austrian economist proved, did not like hypothesize, like this is proven, water and diamonds are not valued because the amount of time that went into making the water available or making the diamond available. It's not a time issue. It's a consumer preference issue. And sometimes people are stupid. There are stupid people who buy stupid things, who buy superstitious things that have actual no intrinsic value and require no time at all to make or collect. You think about social capital. There's a lot of social capital running around that makes no sense at all, and yet it exists. People make weird decisions. You can't make a value judgment about that because the person's already made the decision. Marx expanded on Ricardo's idea of labor value, and he said this: the value of a day's labor power amounts to 3 shillings. Now, he's talking about, in a specific example here, but just listen to what he says here. Because on our assumption, half a day's labor is embodied in that quantity of labor power. That is to say, because the means of subsistence that are daily required for the production of labor power cost a half day's labor. So, by declaration, Karl Marx, being God, just decided, in order to produce a good, that person needs to be paid twice what the labor power of it is worth. A half a day's labor to produce a day's worth of value. So if you work a full day, then you deserve 2 days' pay. That's what he's saying. What? I'm sorry, where's that written? Like, I mean, did I miss that in the 10 Commandments? Like, is that an evolutionary imperative? I'm pretty sure it's not. I'm pretty sure that's not written in nature, that lions get to eat twice of the amount that they actually hunt. Like, is that true? So there's Karl Marx, and this is his calculation of labor value. So if you put it into a mathematical formula, commodities value, a goods value that you buy at the store, is the materials put into that value plus the labor value. But then he defines the labor value as the cost of living, kind of. Actually, it's the cost of living times 2. So now, how do you figure out what the cost of living is? And this is the other problem with Marxism, because what an American in 2020 means by cost of living is everything you see here. Electricity. Oh yeah, that's a human right. Electricity. A home is a human right. Again, this is a religion because humans can live without shelter. There are certain places people still do. Like, where is this religious ideal coming from that people, when they come out of the womb, are entitled to something more than just life? That's a religious belief. That's a superstitious belief that shelter is required. If you want shelter, you do something about it. But since we were born into this situation where we have these things, we just think that they are par for the course. But they're not par for the course. They're not par for the course for orangutans.
No.
So where does this come from? This is a religious belief. And that he thinks not only it's insane to me, like he's more insane than Yang saying like a universal basic income of, hey, we're just going to give you $1,000 a month. Marx would demand more than that because he would demand the cost of living times 2. So whatever that is. So, and the thing is, but it's all arbitrary. And so what we have here is what they call a tautology. You can't define the thing until you define the other thing, but you can't define that until you have that. So you start with what a person actually is going to be consuming times 2, and then you use that to calculate how much the thing can cost. How do you calculate the cost of living without knowing what the price of the good is? And so this is the calculation problem that Mises and everyone in the Austrian school called attention to.
Right.
So if we move from there, the labor theory of value is basically saying, from Marx's perspective, labor theory of value is basically saying, destroy all technological process because all technological progress is unfair. If you have a lever, well, that's unfair to the person who doesn't know how to use a lever. That's unfair competition. We need to even the playing field here. But it's like Jeff Goldblum says in Jurassic Park. he's talking about the technological process of figuring out how to make dinosaurs. And he's like, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. Yeah. So now we have guns. Now we have nuclear weapons. Now we have capital. Now we have electricity. Now we have levers. The Greeks predated this with the myth of Pandora's box. That, she wasn't supposed to open the box. You could think about the Genesis story too, Eve eating the fruit. But what a Marxist wants is to pretend that it never came out. Let's just put it back in. Once humans know about it, someone is going to cheat and go back to the box and open it. You can put it back. Just the knowledge of it being there means that someone's going to do it. You can't ban guns. Not possible. You can't ban nuclear weapons. Not possible. The fact that one person knows and is willing to be like, you can't bury lying. Someone can tell you, oh, I do that too. Now I got an edge. Once there's leverage, you can't put leverage back in the box. So, I'm going to address Christian viewers here for a second, because I think Christianity in a large part is to blame for a lot of this. In Matthew 20, the parable of the workers in the vineyard, Jesus tells this story about a workman. A capitalist, basically. The guy that owns the land brings in some laborers. So he agrees with them up front, hey, you're going to make this amount for the day. And the people say, yeah, that sounds great. That's good. I'm working for that. And then people come in at the end of the day, and they only work like an hour. And at the end of the day, he pays them all the same. And so this is a kind of scandalizes the people who worked all day. And they call him out on it. And he says, hey, look, it's my money. I can do whatever I want with it. What's it to you that I'm generous to these people? And so you can see that's a communist ideal, but who gets to decide? The person who is generous with their own property. So it's like Keanu Reeves. He's notorious, famous, and infamous in a good way for giving like tons of money to other people on the set. Like he gave his hairdresser on, I don't know if it was Matrix or one of them, like this ludicrous amount of money. And he almost works as a communist. I have no problem with that form of communism. In fact, I think that that's pretty awesome. Like if you can apply it yourself and you're not constrained to do it, because once you're constrained to do it, the Muslims have a phrase, there should be no compulsion in religion. As soon as you compel someone to faith or to generosity, you encourage shysters. You encourage people who are going to come in and pretend to be doing it, but really they're sitting there with taking money some other way. It's encouraging disingenuousness. And then John 21, the story goes in the Christian Bible that Jesus is talking to Peter, and Peter's being a whiny bitch about the fact that John, he's going to have to be martyred. Jesus basically says, you're going to die. And Peter's like, well, what about him? What's going to happen to him? And Jesus says, if he stays till I come back, it's none of your business. And that's kind of a scandalous thing to a lot of people. It's like, well, it's just not fair. It was like, the corrupted world is not fair. We hear this from our parents all the time. Life is not fair. Life is not egalitarian. It's not. It's fundamentally not. Nature is not egalitarian. If you declare that it is by faith or by fiat, you will only ensure hypocrites rise to the top. People who have no compulsion, no problem lying about, no compulsion, have no problem lying to get what they want. We don't know what Jesus looked like, but 100% he was not Karl Marx. So back here to Marx's theory of fiat labor value. With his ideology of envy as praxis, Marx psyoped every generation since to eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of fiat value. John Maynard Keynes was smart enough to realize that the juggernaut of capital would not be stopped for 1 second by the Marxist fly in the face, and he saw an opportunity: inflation and credit as praxis. If all value is contrived, we can contrive control over the entire system and keep the aristocracy alive through fiat everything: currency, banking, credit, and property titles. You think about copyright law. Like it's just a fiat declaration. I bought this thing and now I own this idea. Intellectual property. All these things are just fiat power grabs that actually do not originate with capital at all. Like they're just political ideologues. So civilization is a dynamo caught between the managerial paper age boomer, as evidenced by Ryan Selkis's, if you don't work nights and weekends in your 20s, you're not going to have a successful career. Sorry. Just work your way out of it, man. Managerial paper age boomer versus money grows on trees idealists. Is this a product of my imaginative labor? Both of them are just like pie in the sky, thinking that because of the way that they want the world to be, that is the way it is. Oh, well, it worked for me. Yeah, it worked for you, but that doesn't therefore justify the system. It just may mean that it's symptom of the fact that the system is a shit show. Maybe that's the fact here. So back to old Jason Fried here. Is there another option? I agree with Jason Fried's statement here. Fundamentally, if your company requires you to work nights and weekends, your company is broken. Requires is the operative term there. Because I have worked many times where situations where it's not even tacit. It's not even like under kind of like, like, maybe you could do this. It's more like you're going to have to do this or we're going to have to find somebody else. And it always seems to be, again, the people who work the hardest get rewarded with more work, but no more pay. Okay, so you might have a time and a half scenario, but they always find ways to undercut you elsewhere. There's a weird little calculus that goes into that thing. And really what it amounts to is the paper pusher doesn't want to have to do anything. This is a managerial problem, not your problem. This is a process problem, not a personal problem. This is an ownership problem, not an individual problem. Is there another option? So Eric Weinstein and Peter Thiel's podcast from this year and Weinstein's Portal podcast, I thought it was great. They talked a lot about this stagnation. And here you got a Jew and a German working together, letting bygones be bygones, and figuring out how to make things work in the real world instead of this like clown fiesta that we inhabit online with all this political diatribe and who did what and who's to blame, blah, blah, blah. What are we going to do about it? That's all they're concerned about. What are we going to do about it? Yes, Peter Thiel's ancestors massacred Eric Weinstein's ancestors, but what are we going to do about it now? Jeez. So Improbable One shared this great moment from a Rubin Report interview with Brett Weinstein and Eric Weinstein, the brothers. And man, this clip is so good. So thanks to Improbable One for pointing this one out to me. So a guy, Tiago Falero, got this one moment. And the summary of this it's about a 5-minute clip. Brett is bragging on his brother saying, he has learned like so many languages. And Eric is like, but he's not being falsely humble. He's like, no, really, I don't know. I really don't know much. And he's like, but you can speak enough to get by like 10 languages. Like not many people could do that, dude. He's like, okay, well, let me tell you my method. He's like, I do this kind of 80-20 rule. It's basically, I use a lever, a system of learning that helps me get 80% of the functional knowledge and leave all that really hard stuff to the experts. Like I'm not gonna be writing poetry in French or Italian, but I can get enough that I can communicate at certain levels of business and stuff like that. So I get that 80%, and I found a kind of cheap trick to help me kind of to move from one language to another. I figure out enough to get from one thing to other. He's like, it's like the difference between a piano and guitar. People who learn piano and people who learn guitar. Piano is a harder instrument than guitar to learn functionally, but he said the reason for that is because so much, especially, and this is a little bit of his boomerdom or Gen Xdom, but so much of music was guitar-based between the 60s and 2000. I mean, his guitar was preeminent. And so he said these kids were inspired because you could pick up a guitar and play a song almost on the first day. You think about it, some songs don't even change a chord. I mean, there's songs you can play. There's the same chord the whole song. And whoa, well, now you're a folk singer. Congrats. But try to do that on piano, like that's not how piano they teach it. They start you with scale, you know, arpeggios and all these little exercises and stuff, and bore this kid to tears. So that first step is just so high. So and the same thing is true of violin, where people try to get you to that 99th percentile when really you just need functional literacy. Mm-hmm. That's all you need in order to play the CGD chord progression. Mm-hmm. He's like, people need to take, when they're learning something new, the guitar way of viewing the world, where you're actually trying to produce from the beginning. You're trying to make art from the beginning. But what disincentivizes that in our culture is child labor laws, because people are afraid that they're going to make, oh, you know, we don't want this to be work. This is just going to be play. So you foster this public school system is so guilty of this too. You foster this sort of like artificial pastime view of learning and music and art, where it's just like, you're just doing it to put it up on your fridge. You're not actually trying to do it to sell. Which is what our entire culture is built on, selling. The entire thing. But you train a kid to not learn how to do it. You train a kid just to sit there and get an A for this piece of shit macaroni artwork, you know? Mm-hmm. It's just all this impractical shit that doesn't amount to anything. And then you throw them out into the wild and they're not prepared. You know, it's like, can you imagine a red-tailed hawk or something, or a vulture? Like, okay, we're going to teach you how to make origami red-tailed hawks. And then they kick them out of the nest, and then the thing doesn't know how to eat because it's never actually tasted blood before. But hey, it can make a papier-mâché thing. You know, that's what we do to kids. Mm-hmm. So Weinstein says you get 80% of the power with 5 or 10% of the effort. Again, the lever that Marx wants to pretend doesn't exist. You leverage. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Pull out the mediators, quit focusing on mastery, and just get to a functional practice, right? And this statement here, this is the one that Improbable One focused on. It's like the last 5 seconds. Eric Weinstein says one of the most powerful statements. What the school system does, what culture and society do in 2019, it's going to be different in 2020, baby. In 2019, we've been incentivized to make everyone a jack of one trade and the connector of none. We encourage specialists who actually aren't even masters of one trade. Nope, they're just a jack. Because again, what has happened is administrators have insinuated themselves into the process, and everyone's just like, yeah, you're not that good. You're not that good. Let the adults here sit here and talk about how good is, and we'll just get our numbers up. We just got to get our numbers up. Yeah, I mean, like I can imagine an administrator working with Michelangelo, Donatello, and Leonardo, right? I'm sure they would have produced many more Mona Lisas that were half-assed with administrators' help. Jack of one trade, connector of none. We need Renaissance men and women in the 2020s, and we're only going to get there when we acknowledge the technological reality of the lever. Of this leverage idea of putting 5% of the effort in and getting 80% of the output out. Like, PewDiePie is a perfect example of this. I mean, he is the YouTuber par excellence. He is YouTube. Like, that is the idea. A person putting minimal effort into something, but taking down an entire media infrastructure that is predicated on sinecure. All right, 2 last little things. The leisure class. There's this, people on right and left are guilty of this thing, this sort of work as toil, demagogue superstition that just wants you to think that you are meant to be Sisyphus, and the only way you get out of this mess is by sitting there and shoveling shit forever until somebody looks down and is like, It's the Mount Olympus idea. You just wait, and maybe Zeus will shine on you one day. That's insane. This is so superstitious. Isaac Newton came up with some of his best ideas. There was a plague. So he went back to his parents' farm, and he was a non-employed dude living with his mom. And that's when he came up with some of the fundamental parts of calculus. We need to think. We need to have that time to be able to examine things. And our culture, one of the reasons why consumerism, like, quit blaming capital. Just stop. In 2020, just stop. It's over. Capital is won. There's no such thing as communism. It won't happen until we get some of this other stuff worked out. And again, employ communism with your own company. I'm all for that. Like if Chapo Trap House actually meant what they say, and they actually split all their $150,000 a month equally between them, more power to you. Like, that's totally cool. But don't pretend that model is going to overthrow capitalism. Like, just, oh man, this is naive. So the leisure class, the thing about leisure, I used to take a shit on all these politicians for going out and playing golf until I got back to surfing. And there's just something about the male mind. I don't know how it works for females. I'm only talking about dudes here. I think it's probably some truth for a lot of females in the same way. Maybe it's golf, maybe it's something else. But there's something about being in nature, outside, out of the office, where work happens, that you're not working, and then all of a sudden the shower thought hits you like lightning, and you're like, oh, got it. I've got this other workaround that it just would not occur to you. You need that improvisational reconnection with nature to do that. And that's why golf, so many businessmen actually golf. It's not because they're lazy. It's because that time of leisure helps them connect it. Focusing on a different task that's this, it's like, it's not even really important. Yeah. But because it's not important, it frees your mind so that you can actually make the ends meet. We got to get over this whole hatred of leisure that's actually good leisure and not just like meaningless, consumptive dopamine drip, right? The leisure class, I didn't finish this one, but typical Westerner will look at this picture of a rickshawwala and he'll see oppression and he'll see just squalor. Like, I can't... I've been carted around by many a rickshawwala in India. And that so many of them are just happy dudes, okay? They're just happy dudes. And I would never admit that as a, white Western, white privilege. Well, this one Jain dude I knew, he was a property manager, and he did have privilege. He had economic privilege. He was upper class, upper middle, pretty well off. And I think I mentioned this before, but he looked at the rickshawwala and he's like, man, must be nice not have to worry about all this. All the technology, all the extra responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility. If you think, I mean, I do talk a lot of shit about businessmen and our, admins and stuff like that, but there are certain parts of those bureaucracies that are essential. Just because there is a lot of bloat doesn't mean all of it is useless. There's some of these people we're talking make or break decisions. And that 5-hour, 8-hour golf game gave them the eureka that saved 1,000 people's jobs. I always think of the Peter Gregory sesame seed scene in Silicon Valley. One of the best examples of this, where it seems like this Peter Thiel-like investor character is just wasting everyone's time with his autistic sort of interests. And then all of a sudden, they discover that through the leverage of capital and investment, he just saved an entire people's livelihood. He saved their entire careers by 5 hours of meditation. That seemed like just an autistic, rabbit trail, right? And he figured it out by using his brain. We have to realize, so two things, I guess. There is a tendency for the Marxist, and even for me, to put too much emphasis on the work with the hands. But at a certain point, you do need to take a step back, go play golf, go surf, go do whatever, clear the head, because there's probably a better way to do it to make it less toilsome. Because toil is what we really hate. It's the Sisyphus task. It's the doing the same thing every day, and you come back and there's just more of it the next time. It's just soul crushing, man. And it's why Marx is still so emotionally resonant in 2020. Because, man, if you've worked any job, it doesn't have to be menial. Oh man, you could be an accountant, you could be working in a cubicle, and it's just like, you wish that you had the life of Jim and them on The Office. Like that would be beautiful compared to the kind of office environment that you inhabit, where it's just like every time you stay up till 3 a.m. just trying not to go back,
Yeah.
Any
Well,
thoughts?
two things. First thing is, you haven't seen Peaky Blinders yet, have you?
I have not.
There's this beautiful line, just beautiful line. It's like it's this culmination of this last season, where Tommy Shelby he's considering suicide. He's got just too many irons in the fire. You talk
Right.
about the leisure class, and he's just got all these like, and so he's talking to Winston Churchill. And Winston Churchill, because he's like a politician now, and Winston Churchill comes to talk to him. He says, "Tommy, do you have any gardeners?" And Tommy he just like kind of sits and he thinks. He's like, "I've got 2 of them, and they work more than I ever will, and they have no imagination for anything, no ambition for anything, and they're more happy than I will ever be." He's just like, I just resonated with that so much.
Yeah.
Like his gardeners at this, he thought about his gardeners at that point, and he's like, man, I wish I was my gardener right now.
Yeah, when you stare into the abyss, it's like the heart of darkness. You stare into like certain decisions that have to be made, and you start to realize, it's like my dad was probably he was a real anti-Obama kind of person. And when Obama came into power, Dad said there was this moment where Obama walked out of like the Joint Chiefs of Staff, like security briefing or something like that. So he's getting that level 1 clearance or whatever that the president gets. And he said the look on Obama's face was, he didn't quite say this, but it almost sounds like inspired empathy, because it's like he just peered into the abyss. And he realized, oh man, there's so many moving parts in here, and no one is up to this task. It's just like, if you move this thing the wrong way, it is not just economic chaos theory. A butterfly could flap its wings in Central Park, and 1 million people could die in Peking. It's like you could make the wrong decision and result in so many people's deaths. And it is an awesome, disgusting power. It's like, I have become death, destroyer of worlds. And he said that he felt like he could see that weight on Obama also, that again, like idealists from outside are like, oh, we could do it better, this we can do it better. And then you get in the middle, you're like, oh, there's that. I didn't even know that existed. Like when you peek behind the curtain, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I thought it was just a dude behind the Wizard of Oz curtain. No, apparently it's a manticore multiphasic entity that's trying to destroy us. Like,
yeah. Well, then the other thing is working at a large company. It's actually considered a small company, but a growing company. The thing that I'm observing is the way out of this, what you're talking about, a way to moderate, to make sure that not everybody is just stuck at the bottom toiling, is to grow. Is to take the people, like when people come in, you get fresh people all the time. When people come in, they start at the bottom, or they start wherever they can. Most of them are going to start at the bottom. They don't know what they're doing yet.
right.
And then they grow out of it, but you have to promote them up.
Well, I think part of the problem though is that companies, after factories were instituted, companies started to get this thing this striving for permanence in their mind. following an imperial Roman, Pax Romana. We're going to make this legacy. We're going to make it last forever. I think what we need to do coming into 2020s is we need to have entrepreneurs with a more like, what do they call those things? Pop-up restaurants or whatever those hipsters are doing, where it's just basically like it's here today and it's gone tomorrow. We need more of that mentality because I think it will help to inject this love of positive leisure, not just consumptive leisure, but positive leisure that results in more bountiful production where you're not just, because I mean, a lot of companies could have just phased themselves out. They could have worked themselves to the point where they were no longer needed. But companies don't do that. They find way like, just think about like Kmart and Yahoo. Like, is Kmart still around? Is Kmart still a thing?
I don't know. I don't think
so. Did they
declare?
No,
so.
they're still a thing, dude. They're still
Really?
a thing. Yeah. How is that even possible? At its peak in 94, Kmart... it's perverted. Exactly.
That's perverted.
You know what it is? That's Prometheus. So she says, like Charlize Theron says, a king lives, a king dies, and that's the way of things. And at the beginning, there's this entity that ingests the poison or whatever and dies so that other things can live.
Yeah.
That's the kind of mentality. Like where, as opposed to your permanence is your the people that inherit what you passed on knowledge-wise or technology-wise, but it doesn't have to continue to exist in the form of a corporation. From 2005 to 2019, Kmart was a subsidiary of Sears Holding Corporation. It's now a subsidiary of Transform Holdco LLC.
No, I agree. You got to balkanize. You got to the bigger you get, you're saying it would be good to split off. And,
split. Like you think about like the hard forks that happen in cryptocurrency. You think about evolution, like the tree of life. You get this one species going this way. Just branch out, man. Like just quit trying to. We need biodiversity in capital is what we need. And one size does not fit all. Everyone trying to act like this giant monolithic mega conglomerate. Like, golly, T-Series and Disney is what you're going to end up with, and we're going to rule the world.
Yeah, I agree with you. I guess that's what I'm saying is you got to grow to the point, and I don't mean grow. I think you're thinking more like grow in dominance and power.
Right.
I mean, grow in the sense of like grow to the point where more people have the ability to join the leisure class or whatever, more have ability to have more leisure, because there is a level that you have to have people that are toiling. You just do.
Well,
I don't know if like you have to have the gardeners.
Yeah, but here's the other thing. I think as a CEO, you should take a portion of your year and do the toil too, because if you do not, then it becomes out of sight and out of mind, and you don't actually feel the pain. Everyone needs to feel the pain. Everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's the one thing I do kind of like sympathize with the Marx's idealism, if not his practice, because the dude didn't work ever. But yeah, so I tweeted this today. This kind of ties in. Toiling in obscurity frees one to experiment without disingenuous scrutiny. Because you're going to get a lot. If you rise to popularity too soon, you're going to have all these people just like, oh, look at this idiot. Oh, they're going to have these really ridiculous expectations. So if you're in obscurity, then it affords you the time to toil, and to learn from your mistakes. But what I see corporate America doing, political America doing, healthcare, education, religious America doing, and by extension, this has worked its way all through the world and back again, is a prioritization of toil, equating work with toil. And so I say, in the next one I said, not all work is toil, but good work requires some amount of toil to discover what isn't working.
Right.
But the problem is toil is not work, because it's not working. Like, you don't want to just sit there. The myth of Sisyphus is toil. It's pushing the boulder up just to let it fall back down. It's someone saying, dig this hole, now fill it back in.
Well, I guess I work at a mechanic shop, and there's just like somebody's got to do the oil, and that's toil.
Right.
Somebody's got to. I mean, I guess we could create robots to just do that.
Well,
But somebody's got to create the robots, you know?
but see, the question is, the only reason why certain jobs exist is because there isn't somebody, an inventor coming along saying, maybe we don't need to have this problem in the first place. And that's how we got here. That's how we have cars. I mean, somebody could say the exact same thing. Well, you got to have blacksmiths. Oh, yeah, you got to have Archimedes, doing his what did he do? You got to have someone who's going to manufacture. I can't even think
Trapezoid?
the little. It's not the lever. It's the thing.
Oh yeah, what
the
is that?
hinge. Oh, I'm an idiot. So you got to have someone just.
Seesaw. It's called a seesaw.
It's the thing under the seesaw. What's the thing under the seesaw? You got to have somebody making that by hand.
Is it a fulcrum?
Fulcrum. Fulcrum, is that what I'm trying to say? You got to have someone making a fulcrum by hand because that's how we did it last generation. We take things at face value in the milieu in which we inhabit, and we say it's got to be. It was this way forever, and it will be this way forever hence. So what I'm saying is, if you can find a way to make it so that someone doesn't have to change the oil, i.e., make an electric car or something like that, there are ways to. But people are disincentivized to do that because then that might upset the system.
That's
all
true.
technology is disruptive.
But then there's this other thing, and this thing that it's hard to talk about that Jordan B. Peterson talks about, and that is I think he says it's 10% of our population that is below an IQ level that can do anything but the toil. And I work with some of these guys, and so I don't totally buy that, right? And especially believing in the power of supernatural, believing in the power of God in people's lives. I don't believe that somebody is forever condemned to a certain...
Okay. So here's my answer to that. Answer for that, just like with agriculture, one of the biggest advancements in the history of the world that now some people want to regress Luddite through is crop rotation. So why don't we have task rotation in business? It's task rotation. Let a person's mind be fertile for the amount of time. Sometimes a person is going to be ineffective in their particular toil, and you're just causing them pain and causing you as the capitalist pain because they're not outputting as much as somebody else because they've hit the wall. And so this last few weeks being with family and stuff, I've basically just followed my whims. And so when I hit a wall with a video project or something, I was like, I'm tuning out. I'm going to go play video games with Rohan. I'm going to go surfing. And normally I'd feel guilty about that. I was like, oh, this is leisure. But invariably, I finished the thing I needed to do because I got some space away from it. And I was like, it's not as hard as I was thinking. You get in this little and you just start getting mad and you just start calling yourself an idiot and you become Sisyphus,
Yeah.
And so I said,
it's tough though, man.
It is tough. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but we got to figure out a better way than just forcing, a percentage of our society to become toilers. Not all work is toil, but good work requires some amount of toil to discover what isn't working. If you toil for something you love, it imbues that toil with potential. But don't romanticize that particular form of toil as a touchstone. When we started out, we had to... Long list of struggles probably now solved by some other tech or social structure. But you kids want everything on a silver platter. You hated those struggles, and an elder was calling you soft for hating them. Ignoring innovation is superstition. That's my comment on the topic. All right, let's hit some chat before we sign off here. Belated Happy New Year. Thank you, everyone, for the New Year's wishes. Guy Rose says, copywriting an idea is ludicrous. I always thought that ideas' thoughts are not purely original. I believe that ideas are floating in the ether and we have antennas that catch these thoughts. I think that is 100% true. I think it's 100% true because you see this happen. Sometimes it's explainable but with corporate espionage. Other times there are two movies that come out at the same time. The other studio they both started at the same time without realizing someone else happened. It's like ideas come, the zeitgeist just happens, right? And I think that's 100% true. I have noticed me tweet something, and then like 5 minutes later, someone disconnected with me tweets something almost identical. I do believe that there's some truth to that. Some have low tech quality, shitty antennas. Some have awesome antennas. The whole idea of originality and copywriting is a deceit. I agree 100%. That is, when people talk about capital, I think sometimes they mean copyright and intellectual property
rights.
Yeah, like vestigial ideas about what was needed at the time because technology made it so. People had to defend like an idea because they were so. But no, I think we let the winners write those history books, and they were bad. Like enshrining Edison over Tesla would be a good example. Like just the whole Edison mentality way of this sort of just Duplicity is a good movie about this. I really like Duplicity.
Who's that? What? Duplicity. Remind me, who's in that? Is that Batman?
Clive Owen and Julia Roberts.
Oh, okay.
And it's got Tom Wilkinson and he played John Adams. He played
oh yeah,
Paul.
What's his name?
Paul
Giamatti.
Dude, it's just such a fun movie. It's like espionage spy movie, but it's with businesses. So it's like, and it's really got that sort of like His Girl Friday comic banter between. I need to watch that movie. It's good. It's a good like mainstream flick. Improbable one said, "Hey, what up, people? How y'all today? Pretty good. All sunny here." Says Gyro. These baccalaureates are paid top bones for making decision. It's more mental toil than the physical toil. If they're not making any decision and are deferring, then we, the menial ones, can call them out. And I think if you have a healthy, and again, like I don't want to take a giant shit on every corporation again with this sort of like, idealist mentality, because there are sometimes companies that just do it right. I went, we want to call out the things that we think could be better, but sometimes we just talk. It's all bark, no bite. I went back and watched. Johnny Walker did this ad. It had Robert Carlyle, and it's this 6-minute continuous Steadicam take as Robert Carlyle walks through Scotland, and he's talking about the history of Johnny Walker. And I'm like, man, like I almost want to go toil for Johnny Walker after watching it. This is so good, dude. It is such a good ad. It's like maybe one of my favorite cinematic things, and it's just a freaking ad. It's so good. It's so good. And it makes you realize that a lot of things that pass for like art are actually just ads. But this is honest that it's an ad, and it becomes, I think, a work of art. It's so good. And a lot of like I got some, this is my new favorite scent, Mugler's Amen Pure Malt. Oh, dude. I mean, come on, there's good stuff being made out there, man. Like, we just need to make some of it ourselves. Heidel Stress Cog. Heidel, I haven't seen you in like over a month. BFF, Love Ford, and Christmas Light Guy. I hope you and your families had a most enjoyable holiday season. Yeah. Do you have an enjoyable holiday season, Judah?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it was good. A question for Judah from Gyro. In respect of his point on growing, what would you choose, leisure or security financial?
Definitely. Well, in life, I've chosen leisure, and I regret it.
Me too. So I would say don't throw out the advice. Just find a way to chart your own course between the hyper toil view and the leisure view. And I think that's what me and you are trying to discover.
Yeah.
We're trying to find a third path where it's, Clint Eastwood is actually not a bad person to look at with this. He had a real interesting perspective on filmmaking, and he wasn't fully, like from my perspective, he wasn't fully successful because some of his marriages didn't work out. But he had an interesting work-life balance. I think there are other paths than just the become a CEO, become a careerist, or become an artist. Like try to find ways that you can, that Japanese, I think it's the Japanese idea of ikigai, where it's like you find your concentric circles where your talents, your passions, your what is actually can be paid for, where all these things kind of line up. And I think that can probably be a little bit helpful. Heidel says, what you speak of is otherwise known as communism through threat of violence. I can't remember when that was happening. You guys need to check out Pareto distribution, the commonly known as the 80-20 theory. Pareto's distribution of 80-20 can be seen in almost everything. It seems like a part of nature, really. And I think that's why we need to not just specialize in one thing, because then you become a jack of trades, connector of none. If we can find a way to juggle our Pareto distributions, so maybe I'm in the 10%. So like with perfume is a perfect example. I don't know jack shit about this. I just like how it smells. I'm the normie idiot. All right. So I defer to someone else who's more knowledgeable, and I ask their opinion. Like, so you're gonna be a noob, normie, boosted, loser in certain areas, but you may be like willing to be the toil for that just because you believe in the thing, So we're like you said, we're not going to get rid of that 10% bottom. But sometimes we should probably work in that just to get a sense of the pulse of the thing.
Yeah, I really appreciate my boss. He started with a laptop and bought a truck and just started, and just learned how to. I mean, actually, the first thing he ever did was just sat in a what do you call those big box Menards or something like that, and he was just reading. He just read a how-to book, like one of those thick how to do everything, and like in mechanics and household fixing of stuff. And now he's the CEO, and he's always out on the floor working on trucks.
Right.
He's always doing it. Like, he's the CEO, and he's always
got his hands there. I am all for that kind of thing, and I really think that some of Marx was trying to get at was he was really taking pot shots, justifiable shots at these kind of cartel sorts of tycoons who are basically don't give a shit. They treat people as capital. They treat products as means to an end. It's a very Machiavellian way of looking at the capital. But if you can have somebody who is Michael Moore, he used to have a show, TV Nation, back, I guess it was like the 90s. Yeah. And we were actually impressed because he did include this one thing where he went up to giant buildings, and he was like, he challenged the CEO of, some giant company to do something. So he challenged Ford's CEO, or maybe I think it was Ford's, to change the oil. And the guy did it. I mean, it was a good PR move for him, but just the fact that he even knew how to do it. I mean, there are a lot of CEOs who'd be like, I ain't good out there, Like, so even that, Michael Moore is actually a little bit impressed. Mr. Michael Moore. He was like, wow, it's pretty cool, dude. And it was, a genuine moment. I think if we had more of that, Sam Walton was like that, from what I understand. The dude was he was a workhorse, but he was passionate about it. It wasn't a toilsome thing. Even though he was doing the toil work, he imbued it with something, Heidel says this is a great line, dude. Self-mutilation is better than reasoning others' ways. Okay.
What?
So it's better to self-mutilate than to have to change your entire way of viewing the world to accommodate some bad boss. And I have this is true, I think, for anybody. It's tempting for anyone who is a fan of someone's work that you become just the true believer toady, where you just basically, you're willing to do the toil, and you don't just imbue it with promise of the future. You just actually it's just almost like penance. It's like, yes, I'm suffering for the master. Like humans we're not meant to be like that, man. Like if your spirit is broken for some, megalomaniac, just screw that guy.
Yeah.
Lauren said, I agree sometimes that space is what you need for a brain reset in terms of leisure. So yeah, I think it's true. I think it's just something humans need.
That's the Sabbath. That's what the Sabbath is for.
Right. That whole idea of
the reset, you can't continually work. You just can't do it.
Definitely.
It's evil to continually work.
Improbable One asked, can we, the humans, grow out of the curve of the 80-20 of Pareto distribution? I would say not in this current age, if you want to call it Kali Yuga or whatever, or the cursed age or the late capital, whatever. I don't think that we can get out of it by trying to overthrow it. I think the way that you do it is like that parable Jesus said about this generous capitalist, this generous landowner who rewarded everyone according to how his generosity. So nothing prohibits you from evening the playing field on your own terms within your own influence. But when you compel other people to do that, that's when it incentivizes people to cheat. And but I do kind of like this idea of task rotation. That's my, what I'm going to try to attempt to do is, and this last year has given me more experience working with my hands, and I've realized I'm terrible at it. So I am in that bottom 10 to 20%, but sometimes you just need a hand. Like, you don't need skill. You just need someone to be a hand, to hold the other part of the tool or whatever.
Yeah.
So we need more of that. Yeah.
We did a little bit of that. Remember when we worked on the Squirrel Nami?
Oh yeah.
Little task. It's hard for you. Listen, you're a perfectionist. I'd like to see how task rotation works in your business.
Well, that's the problem why I'm still alone. And this is why I'm always drawn to YouTube, is because it is YouTube. Like, I can just not have to delegate, and I'm not very good at it. And I think that is another thing that about leadership. We tend to think about the bad leaders in our lives, but like if you can think of a person that's done a good job of it, you can take a step back and realize, this is marvelous. Like, this is really hard to watch somebody else doing it poorly and being like, yeah, that's good, dude. Yeah, that's good. And not say it like I'm saying it right now, like to actually be like, hey, good job. Like, that means a lot. One of the bosses at the previous job, I was just kicking myself because I was doing the window trim and it just looked like shit. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to fix this. He's like, no, man. No, this is good. This is good. This is good. This part right here needs a little work. And you know what? We can fix that with just a little putty. Like, when we paint it, it's going to look fine. It's like, really? It looks like garbage, man. He's like, no. This is good. This is great. I was like, okay, thanks. Like, that's so encouraging to somebody who's feeling like Sisyphus. And so you need somebody, like, the fact that your boss is willing to do the Sisyphus task helps keep him tied to it. And here's the other thing. And this is getting back to that rickshaw wallet point. For some people, it's not a Sisyphus task. They like it. Yeah. Some people just like doing it. There's something like invigorating about the task. Like for me, surfing, like a lot of people, I think, looking at me going down the beach into the water when it's freezing, my wife looks at that and she sees hell. She's like, you are an idiot. That is stupid. And I go through it and I feel the pain of that first little thing. But it's just like, you just shut it off. Like, this is worth the reward. And so it imbues, like yesterday, I took one on the head and went underneath it. And I came up was just like, oh, baby. I like just took a wave right in the head. You've got our waves aren't that big. But I took it and it just felt good, man. Yeah. Like, it just feels good. I want it.
It feels good to bleed. We've been talking about that. Yeah. But I think that's what's perverted and evil about today's society and the internet and there's a glorification of, there is a deriding of these menial, of bleeding.
Yes.
Yes, menial labor and bleeding that I have to be careful to really, I don't know. I really want my kids to not glorify, like I glorified, this whole leisure class.
Well, thing. Yeah, there's two dangers. I think one of them is sentiment posing as empathy. And so people see someone working hard and they feel pity. When really the person working hard is looking at you and feeling pity because you're not as effective as them, and not physically fit. Like, it's like you work. I look at guys in the gym. I'm like, golly, why? Oh, I hate it. I hate gyms, dude. But they look at me and I'm like, man, you could look so much better, dude. You could feel so much better. Because when you do, even if you don't like the environment of the gym, you feel better after 2 weeks. Full stop, you feel better. They're looking at us with pity. We look at them with pity. Like, who's the more piteous? Me in that case. Unless I found some other way to accomplish the same goal.
Right. Right. Right.
So I think there's a tendency to, it's more of a reflection. Like there are some works of art in the history of the world. What you say about them is really an indictment of you. Like you don't stand in judgment of them. They stand in judgment of you. And so I think that there is this tendency to prioritize sentimentality where people are like, oh, they think it's pity, but really it's just actually, it's masturbatory sentiment.
Yeah.
It's disconnected from reality.
And we're sort of slaves to our own zeitgeist, you know,
Yes.
the zeitgeist of the time.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so Heidel Stresskog mentions Nyquist stability criterion. Dude, so I looked this up. I don't know anything about that. So I'll read some about them. Take my
Go Jim haters.
I hate gyms, dude. Just screw that shit.
Jared and I are. Jared's much more of a gym guy, but I've been going to the gym.
Well, no, he's got in good shape, man.
Yeah.
I say that, but at the same time, I think, I mean, it's good for you. Like if you can make it work, fit in your schedule. Me, I just want to find a way to do it outside. So my gym is primarily going to be the water. We actually have a little shed now, and dude, it feels so good punching that 80-pound punching bag. I can't tell you. Like my knuckles are starting to bleed. Dude, it feels good. Oh. So find the thing that makes you feel good that other people would look at and be like, why are you doing that? Maybe it's mountain climbing, maybe it's bike riding. We had one of our longtime friends of the channel called himself the internet cycling guitarist. You know, like find the thing, like maybe it's cycling in Mumbai. You know, like other people be like, that's dangerous. So you're like, you live for it, you know?
Hiking. I can't stand hiking, but some people just
love it. Yeah. Walking is, I feel compelled to walk. And flaneuring is it's a more like urbane sort of pursuit, cosmopolitan, but I think it's good. I mean, sometimes, if you just want to walk around in a city or something like that, and walking. But yeah, physical activity, especially in the outdoors, I think is just so useful. So
yeah, absolutely.
All right, I think that's pretty much it for today. Got my my rant about communism. I think Marx had the right. I think honestly, a very cynical perspective. I don't know enough about him because I haven't read all of it. But I think a cynical perspective could be that he was just enterprising, a grifter. From his writing, I don't actually think he was. I think he was genuinely overcome with sentiment in response to the problem. And there's a problem. It's definitely a problem. This whole 80-20 thing that we're talking about, this whole toil, like that's worth fixing. But the answer to it is not a Luddite reaction or regression. You're never going to put it back in Pandora's box. It's over.
Dude, I wrote down what you said. Ignoring technology is superstitious. That's going on a t-shirt.
Okay. Yeah. I thought that was actually pretty good.
I
thought that was pretty good. I like titles today too. Self-mutilation is better than reasoning another person's way. I like that. Jesus actually said something like no, it was somebody else. It was some other Bible person. Because back then they were saying like if you were going to follow the path that a Christian was, what it meant to become a Christian, that you're going to have to get circumcised because that was the Jewish way of doing it. And Paul said, I would that these people would just mutilate themselves rather than telling other people. And mutilate, like I think the word meant like castrate. It's like make them go even further. Oh, okay. You want to circumcise that dude when he's an adult? How about you just?
Yeah.
So, did you watch Wrecking Crew movie yet? No, I still haven't.
What is that? What's the Wrecking Crew?
It's about is it jazz? I think it's some jazz musicians. Sounds interesting. What was that thing you were talking about? I'm sorry. In response to that first, I haven't really been watching many movies at all. I'm behind. I have a list of over 400 movies. And now I've started a Bollywood series, so now I've got like all these Bollywood movies to catch up with. Yeah, it's over. I found all my Bollywood treasure trove. There's like 50 movies in there I haven't watched yet. So it's gonna be a Bollywood year for the surfing violinist. So hopefully, Indian viewers will be fun again. This is one that I'm excited about doing because again, it's got the music thing going for it. And Bollywood musicians, like eventually, hopefully, I'll be able to cover some of these Bollywood songs. That'll be a way to work on my Hindi, keep it a little bit better than it is. But the problem with that is they're so good. Their singers are so good. Like, I don't know if I could sing. So if you're an Indian and you know a Bollywood song that might be approachable for someone that's not so ridiculous, good at singing, let me know. Because even Kill Dill, the song I covered this week, I was like, I've tried doing a little bit of the yodel stuff that they do, and I'm like, I don't know what I don't want to subject anyone to that. How the music was made. Watch it. We can talk. All right, I'll check it out. Heidel, also, you mentioned something about some surf contest thing. What was that?
How did it go?
How did that go? Well, you let us know sometime.
Yeah.
I was going to try to contact you, but I have no way of getting in touch with you. Improbable one, by the way, are you aware of shit going down in India? We reached the detention centers phase. There's going to be a register for citizens.
Where?
Yeah, some weird shit going on in India right now. I don't know enough to comment on it. But I will say that Joey Diaz thing that you shared with me was just...
What?
I'll put this in the chat. Hold on one second. Where did you share that? Hold on. This is some totally politically incorrect Joey Diaz at his peak.
I was listening to Joe Rogan talk about Joey Diaz and about how like he would get these roles. How he would what do you call it when you go in and you
Jiu-jitsu
interview? No, how
okay.
Joey Diaz would get. He went into one. What's it called? When you go in to get a role, like in
auditions.
Audition. Thank you. My brain doesn't work. And he was talking about how he looked around and saw a bunch of like, he called them Guidos like him, fat Guidos like him. He thought I don't have a chance, so he took off his clothes and went in his whitey tighties.
The dude is just raw like id. He's just raw id. This thing I just posted is so like, it is so politically incorrect. There was one specific thing he said in it. Like most of it was too much for me. I was like, dude, I can't believe he's allowed to say this. They're like, "This is America." He plays the Star Spangled Banner behind him, and he's like, "This is America. You're American. You're American. Get up, grab your balls, and get out the door. It's time to wake up. You're American." He's like, "I don't care where you're from. You can still be an American. You don't have to live here. You just have to have the mentality. Grab your balls and get up off your ass." It was hilarious. Dude, his story about what happened with his mom is one of the most brutal things I've ever heard. Like, it's one of the most effective modern parables. Like, if maybe Joey Diaz is Jesus. Like, I listened to that it's a joke that's 12 minutes long, and you laugh and you're like, oh my God. It's a probing, like the dude is just, yeah, he's like a raw id. Maybe he is the Nietzschean ideal. I don't know. But I'm glad Joey Diaz exists. Thank God for Joey Diaz. All right, guys. Well, Godspeed. Yeah. Until next time, keep it creative, cross-cultural constructive. He's got a T-shirt. The Christmas Cathedral. The crazy son of a bitch, he did it. So he's got give me a link. I'll throw it in the...
All right, I'll throw it. All right. Where do you want me to put it?
Just in the... just send it to...
I'll put it in. How about in the video? I'm watching the video right now.
Yeah, throw it there and I'll see it, and then I'll share it so that people on the other thing can see it.
Okay, I'm putting it in as Roto Hackers. Roto Hackers. Did you see it? I don't know if that's a good link. It's just Ford. It's Ford-Judah. If you go to teespring.com/Ford-Judah, is it something like?
Where did you drop it?
In the comment section of the chat of YouTube.
YouTube?
It didn't show
it up yet. Did I get disconnected? Wait.
Or I could do. How do I? I'll put it in the.
Oh, weird.
Did you
Yeah,
see it? You see it in the chat between you and the Hangouts?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll do Hangouts. Technical difficulties. I'm sorry. Technical difficulties.
Yeah. So the one, the link I'm sharing is for this one right here. It's the Christmas Cathedral, and it's got little things in it. It's got Santa on his laptop, slouching, laying back. Got presents in front of him. Got a little Kappa hat there for the colleges.
Oh yeah, something I didn't talk about, like, because I was Mr. Scrooge for years. I've been Scrooge. I actually had a very good Christmas experience, and we watched the play at Shakespeare Festival. It was called All Is Calm, and it's about the Christmas truce between the Germans, the European side and the Allies side. So these Brits and these Germans end up singing songs together on Christmas night, and it was perfect. Some of the things they said in that play, whoever wrote it was just. It was so good. A lot of it was just my ideology writ large. And
what's it called again?
All Is Calm. And it's actually a musical. The whole thing is them singing, and they don't even have any backup. It's just like a cappella, and they did a great job. So apparently they brought in actors from elsewhere. There's a lot of New York off-Broadway actors, and they were great. I was pretty impressed. So that melted my Grinch heart this year. So it was pretty good.
What do you mean? You just kind of hate Christmas?
Yeah, I think I guess I don't know. It is one of those things go in cycles, but it was probably in my reactionary phase where it was like, as a Christian, I felt it was too commodified and I had become just the sort of like just a dopamine drip. But India actually helped a lot, because experiencing some of their religious festivals and realizing how many of the things that we do during our own holidays are very similar. Family, eating, giving presents, or doing fireworks. And I was able to enjoy theirs and realize, there are things I do like about, just the family aspects and everything. So, but also that play put a nice little spin on it, that a holiday could bring peace, at least for a time. And man, the more you learn about World War I, the more like disenchanting it is. A lot of how all this stuff played out, and but I won't get into all that. All right. Well, Godspeed to everyone. Thanks guys for tuning in. Some more videos this week. I will be posting.
I love that you're
some
posting,
stuff.
Man. Posting stuff.
Yeah. So I'm trying to keep it consistent for 2020. Keep it consistent. Yeah. Maybe that'll be my goal for 2020 is that. So not all of the videos are going to be super interesting, but hopefully you can see some progress over time. I will be back playing some League of Legends in a few minutes. I'm going to get some water and, so.
All right.
Godspeed. We'll see you on the other side.